Frogger from Konami hit the arcades in 1981 and originally published by Sega in some locations. Frogger is considered a classic, and like all classics, the object of the game is quite simple. Direct frogs to their homes one by one by crossing a busy road and navigating a river full of hazards. That's all there is to it. Okay, there's a little more to it than just that. Every forward step scores 10 points, and every frog arrived safely home scores 50 points. 10 points are also awarded per each unused half second of time. Guiding a lady frog home or eating a fly scores 200 points each. And when all 5 frogs reach home to end the level, the player earns 1000 points. Now Frogger should be right home on the MSX since no scrolling is involved, and while this port does look reasonable and sound very much like the arcade original, it doesn't play like it. The biggest issue is the left to right movement of the frog. For some reason the frog takes little baby steps rather than a decent sized jump. Was this done to keep the amount of side steps the same as the arcade game, but to cater to the resolution of the MSX port? Who knows? While this doesn't break the game, it does change the feeling somewhat. Next is the Commodore VIC-20 version. Yep, this is probably as basic as the ports will get, but yet it still manages to play reasonably well. The jerky movement can be off-putting, but if you're able to cope with that, you may enjoy this version. Here we go with the first of 2 versions of Frogger for the Atari 2600. This is the Parker Brothers release, and for Atari 2600 expectations, it's not bad. I especially like how you can warp from one side of the screen to the other as default. The sprite flicker is troublesome though. There are many instances that render your frog invisible. And this is the second Atari 2600 version, simply known as the official version. As you can see, this looks vastly superior to the Parker Brothers release. It also features music throughout the gameplay and the alternating enemy patterns from the arcade game. This is by far the better of the 2 releases. Let's stay with Atari numbered consoles with the 5200 version. How it plays is a mystery. I couldn't get the bloody controls to work. Oh well, at least you can see it running. This wasn't an official release, but a homebrew from 2006, and what a great port it is. Technically this isn't Frogger, but Froggy. Yeah, like the name change is going to stop the copyright police. But we shouldn't worry about that, because what we have here is a fantastic port of Frogger to the Atari 7800. Just a moment ago we couldn't see the Atari 5200 version, but that's okay, because here is the Atari 8-bit home computer port, which are pretty much always carbon copies of 5200 games, besides a slight difference in colour palette. So how is this one? Well, surprisingly good. It's quite a nippy port, with good controls and nice audio. They say there are two versions of Frogger for the Apple II, one by Online Systems and another by Sega. Well, they're actually both the exact same game, and this is it. Yet another fairly good port. If there was one criticism, it would be that the little caves where the frog goes to are a little small. Oh, and also that the frog looks more like a spaceship. Oh my, what a load of crap this is. The VIC-20 may have been more basic looking, but at least it was playable, unlike this monstrosity on the BBC Micro. What on earth were the developers thinking? The road section resembles something you'd actually have to ride on rather than avoid. Not that you can avoid anything due to the incredibly laggy controls. They're totally broken. The BBC Micro could have handled a fairly good Frogger port, but instead we got this rubbish. Back to the competent port with this Commodore 64 version by Sierra. Looks good, plays good, and sounds reasonable. Not a bad port. Okay, let's take a look at some console ports now, starting with the Game Boy Color. This port was released by Majesco over many different consoles. It's a cheap looking port, but it plays like Frogger, so what more could you ask for? Mega Drive port here, which was also developed by Morningstar Multimedia and released by Majesco. This is basically a very close arcade port to the Mega Drive. Sounds, looks and plays just like its arcade big brother. Super Famicom time, and again it's developed by Morningstar Multimedia and released by Majesco. Now, where the Mega Drive version was pretty much a solid arcade port, this is more like some lame-ass homebrew game developed over the weekend. It looks cheap and sounds bad. Thankfully it plays well enough, but why bother playing this when the Mega Drive version is so much better? And here we are with the Game Gear version, which was not developed by Morningstar Multimedia or released by Majesco. In fact, this game was never completed. This prototype from Sega is more of a reimagining of Frogger with more complicated gameplay and vastly superior graphics. In fact, while I was playing this, I forgot I was playing a Game Gear game. I thought it was a Mega Drive title. It's just a shame this one never got a release. Homebrew version here for the Atari ST, with a game over tune that sounds like it's ripped from the New Zealand story. This is a noble effort, however I feel more effort needed to be put into the placement of the water objects. Sometimes there just isn't anything available to jump on, which can be annoying. I do like the rapid movement though. Being able to keep my finger on the up key to constantly move is cool. Another homebrew version by Tiny Tomo on the Sharp X68000. This is very similar to the Mega Drive version, as in it's a pretty close to perfect arcade port. This version also included the arcade title screen, which is nice to see. This does seem to be playing faster than the original though, or maybe that's just my imagination after playing so many ports of Frogger. Hey ZX Spectrum fans, does this look familiar to you? Yep, this is the same crap that is on the BBC Micro, which is no surprise when we find out A&F Software were behind it. Yep, same poorly designed stage area and same laggy controls. Absolutely awful. Here's another Spectrum version, this time from Terminal Software. This doesn't fare much better. In fact, this one doesn't even load right, meaning it's impossible to complete one successful crossing. Okay, we are near the end now. This is the PC version. This version is really old, making it very tricky to run on modern PCs. As you can see, it runs at an inconsistent speed. This wasn't a DOS game, but a game running under the PC's own OS. Let's finish up with the PlayStation version. Featuring a new 3D world but retaining the classic gameplay makes this version one of the better Frogger games out there. Even the music has a charm which fits the game's aesthetics rather well. And let's take a look at all those versions of Frogger running side by side. There's a lot of them.